Thank you for joining us for this episode. Today I'm joined by Kayla from Spexy, and we're going to be speaking about keeping your staff by training them well on the OI show. Thanks again for joining us for this episode. We're with Kayla from Spexy. It's good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Hello, David. So great to see you again. I'm
Yeah.
doing so great.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, Kayla, you started Spexy and you've been working Spexy over I don't know, what is it, 6, 7 years? Is it that long? 5
We
years?
started 2019 is when we went all in. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so like
about
5
5 years.
years.
Yeah.
Wow. For those who don't know, tell us a little bit about Spexy.
Spexy is an online training resource and tool availability for independent practices. So if you think about it like Netflix, but it's like Netflix for optical learning. So you have a subscription to Netflix, you would log in to watch a comedy, then you might log into our system and watch a new hire series. Or if you wanted to watch a horror film, you can watch a series on managed care. That would be the equivalent of a horror film in our industry. But just like you would have a series for Netflix and watching videos on in series on Netflix, you'll do the same thing for optical learning. And so we've got that available as a library. We are geared specifically towards independent practices and the daily struggles that they have. So it's a resource for everyone in the independent office, from the front desk to the doctors, techs, opticians. It's a really powerful, good little resource to have in your back pocket.
So why are you qualified to be the training expert on all of these things?
Oh, I love this.
Mhm.
Well, it's one of those things when you start doing what I do, you have a wee bit of what we call imposter syndrome, where you're like,
Yeah,
am I qualified for this? Am I supposed to be
you
doing
you
this?
you are. I asked that question knowing the answer, but for other
Yes, yes.
people,
I started out in the optometric industry about 17 years ago.
yeah.
Started running and managing multiple practices, and started to see right off the bat that there is a big need for consistent resources for training. And it started out with new hire training, but then even leadership training. And so basically, what I was doing there for a while, we can get into the deep of it, but the short of it is what I was doing is helping multiple offices basically manage their teams, help with their education, help with their training. And then I realized it doesn't matter if it's a large practice or a small practice, they all need the same training from me. So, how about I make this much more affordable for them? And I'll take all of my trainings and I'll put them online and give them a resource to be able to access it at a much lower cost, a much lower barrier
Yeah.
to entry. And so that's where that came from. So, since then, since starting Spexy, we now have over 1,200 users on our platform. 1,200 active users, needless to say, which is good,
Mhm.
better than non-active ones. 1,200 active users on our platform. And what that has allowed for us to do is basically to go into multiple practices and see how our trainings are working and be able to modify them and adapt them to make sure that we're staying up to date. And so I guess what makes me qualified is not only do I feel like I was rather qualified in the beginning, but we're always adapting and adjusting to see what practices are actually needing, when
Yeah.
in the boots on the ground scenario.
Yeah. So people that are listening to our podcast, they have full scope optometric practices. And what I'm thinking based on the name, that some people may perceive that this is just for optical. And although you do
Oh,
have some optical stuff, if you would bring value to somebody who didn't even have an optical, and tell us how that is, like what kind of the things that you do that are beyond just optical.
yeah. Well, I will say that we do have a heavy reliance on optical because optical, for most independent practices, the optical brings in a very heavy portion of your revenue, and yet there's not a lot really taught on how to sell things in the optical. So there is that. So we do have quite a bit of training there. However, for the offices that don't have an optical setup, there are a lot of resources as far as having new hire training, being able to have that front desk person become a contributing part of the team as quickly as possible, be able to have your tech become a quick contributing part of the team. Sorry about that. And then Also to be able to have resources for the doctors, because so many doctors, we go to all these CE events, and they're like, oh yeah, you should be prescribing from the chair and recommending from the chair and all these things. Okay, cool, but give me actionable like scripts that I can take that I know have worked in other practices. And those are resources that we give to our offices. We also have courses in our system for billing mastery, for medical coding and billing, for vision plan, I guess maximization, as much as that can possibly be. So there are a lot of other opportunities beyond, yes, just the optical, as far as having resources there for your office.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I continually am reminded of when I speak with somebody like you is how can I better interact with the patient? Those soft skills, those like better communication, where it's really difficult for me in training a new person. Uh, because I sit them down at a computer. I'm like, okay, you need to learn the electronic health record, where to enter everything, and I think we so often focus on those hard skills, those like really noticeable. But what are some things that you can share with us that can help with our sales, can help with that patient connection? Um, you know, initially when we're first talking to them on the phone, like what are some things that we can really do? I think about, there's a difference between one hotel and the Ritz-Carlton when I walk in the door, right? There's a difference between the Four Seasons when I show up, right? And maybe it's just the bellman and the valet who's there to greet me and doesn't offer to take my things to my room. He just does it, right? He's like, "Oh no, it's no
Yeah.
charge. You don't have to pay us anything, but let me get these up to your room for you." Versus the like, "Would you like me to take this up to your room for you?" And they're like looking for
Yeah.
money right away, right? What are some things in an eye care practice that could help us make that patient connection? Because nobody knows. No, what's the saying is like people don't care until they know how much you care. And how do we show them we care? There's
Yeah,
a lot in
yeah,
there.
and that is a loaded question, and I love all of it. That is so great and so timely too, because we are just releasing, funny enough, a course, a series for training these soft skills, and we stumbled upon this whole thing about a year and a half ago, where we went into a practice. We do these immersion events where we go into a practice, and we went into this practice, and they were diehard Spexy fans, right? Totally love them. They had basically memorized our scripts. They were doing our things. They were procedurally doing everything correct. And I walked in that practice and I'm like, oh, this is missing the mark. And it goes so much more beyond just, a smiling face. And so much more beyond, smiling when you answer the phone, because it makes a difference when you say, hello, this is Dr. Smith's office versus hello, this is Dr. Smith's office. Those are little things that matter, and those are things that we had trained on before, but really understanding these soft skills that I think a lot of today's society, I'm not even going to say the younger generation, because I'm telling you, folks, there were people in their 50s at this practice that were falling into the same boat, but that this
Right.
younger
Yep.
generation was really struggling with, or I'm sorry, this today's society, sorry, was really struggling with really being able to make connections with their patients. It's like there was kind of a wall up, and
Mhm.
so we did a whole training on soft skills for this practice, and turns out they started implementing it right away, and the result is that they ended up having an overall better capture rate in their office and better patient experience. And so we're like, whoa, there, because we're all trying to increase capture rate, right? We're like, whoa, there's definitely something here. There's a big opportunity to be able to maximize these soft skills. So we really started looking at this. And back to your question, what are things that people can be doing? I'm going to start out with saying that there's a lot that we can be doing that we don't realize. And we train our team to go, "Hey, when the phone rings, answer it by the third ring, please." Or when you see a patient walk in, make sure you acknowledge them, when you're done with your patient. When those types of things. And I'm going to tell you right now, no patient is going to leave your office because when they walked in, you finished with your phone call and then you said, "Hi, how can I help you?" No patient's going to leave your office for that. No patient is going to leave your office because you walk out and you say, "John, John, we're ready for your exam. John, like, no, nobody's going to leave because of that.
Right.
However, just like you're talking about with the hotel versus the Ritz Carlton, when you have a different experience, something to just blow them away, and it's so easy with soft skills, it's a really good opportunity. So, for example, when they answer the phone, not just having the energy of being able to answer the phone, but to being able to direct the conversation. And we teach a lot of that in our courses. When people walk in, giving, okay, there's this whole training in, there's a book called Cues. It's by Vanessa Van Edwards. And in this Cues book, there is, she talks about palm flashing. Okay. Sounds silly. But as humans, when we see another human's palm, it's a point of connection that is created within our human psyche. Okay. So just being able to give them simply when they walk in, even if you're on the phone, simply raising your hand and giving them a little wave like, hi, I'll be right with you. I said hi, but you don't have to say hi just because we're on podcast here. But raising your hand and giving a simple smile and a little wave is an acknowledgement that allows that person to have this calming feeling. So many times when we walk into an office, let's just pretend, let's just, get a little
Yeah.
imagination going. We walk into an office and and it doesn't even have to be an eye doctor office. Let's say you're going down to, the bank or something, and you walk in the door and there are two bankers behind the desk and they're maybe talking to each other or looking down at, some of their stuff, and they don't acknowledge you right away. Immediately, the reaction that we get as humans is to go, uh, uh, mm, am I in the right spot? What do I do? Where do I go?
Mhm.
And there's this level of discomfort that immediately starts happening as soon as we walk into some place, because what you're doing is you're making yourself vulnerable when you're walking into
Right.
that place. And
Yep.
so once you've walked into that place and you're not acknowledged, you immediately have this little bit of angst. Now we're
Yeah.
used to it.
It's
But that
true.
doesn't mean that doesn't
It
mean
doesn't mean
that
it's
we need
right.
to necessarily exactly. And so
Yeah.
giving someone a little palm flash, a little wave actually makes them feel like they are accepted. Like, okay, I'm in the right spot. I'm doing the right thing. I'll just wait just a moment, right?
That makes
On
sense.
top of yeah, right. The other thing that we encourage offices to do is once they have checked their patient in just at the front desk, the worst thing I think that you could possibly do is send them to the waiting area. Don't
Yeah.
do that. I would recommend that most of y'all get rid of your waiting area, to be honest with you. Put some nice couches in your optical, because what you're doing is you're setting up this preconceived notion that they need to go over there and wait, right?
Hmm.
And if we talk about a lot of preconceived notions that happen in our cues that we're giving patients, I mean, when we're asking them for insurance, we're getting them in the insurance mindset, right? What are different ways that we can ask for their insurance to check their coverage without necessarily putting them in the mindset of, oh, my insurance is going to be covering everything, because we're always asking about insurance. Does that kind of make sense? Like, so there's a lot
Right.
of different little tiny cues that we're giving our patients even but before they even get back to even start the exam, that we could be adapting. And we go through very, very deeply in the series. But being able to recognize that patient right off the bat when they come in with just a simple palm flash is something that
Hmm.
you don't really think about.
No.
But that is something, it's different than, Mary sitting there at the front desk with her head down, on this call. And maybe she just looks up and smiles. Maybe she looks up and rolls her eyes. I know some, here's another patient. But the reality is being that little tiny bit of just welcoming little like wave allows that patient to start to make those connections with you. And then if you hit them with repeated little tiny soft skills that will ultimately make the biggest difference in their experience. And it starts from the moment that they walk in, and there are little tiny soft skills that can be taught all throughout the member
Yeah.
journey.
That really makes sense, and I appreciate just that little tidbit, showing people that wave and having that's a really, really good aspect. I want to talk to you a little bit about a little pivot, and that is, what is the cost of not spending money on training? And, I think about this, and you probably have this well down, but I think about, I suck at it, right? I mean, and most, I think, optometric offices do, is it's almost as if there's too many resources, is that people don't know how
Yeah.
to funnel them into and so we just don't do anything. If I hire somebody who's not in the optometric space, um, if they stay for 2 years, I'm lucky. And I think I heard somebody give this example is that you might be selling jeans at the mall, and it's pretty easy to know everything there is to know about jeans. And every day
Uh-huh.
you go to work and you know exactly what you're going to do. And then you go to an eye care office and you're making $1 more an hour. And you're like, great, this is a big deal. But every day for 2 years, you don't fully know how to do your job and you're never really fully there. And so you end up going back to a different job, maybe even making a little less money, but because the satisfaction of knowing what to do is there. And eye care is a space where you can't go to medical school to become an optometric technician. There's not really training in very. There's a
Right.
couple places, but you know, you and I live in the West Coast. There isn't really anything close. Or to become an optometric front desk specialist who understands vision and medical insurance. Right? There are some optician schools, but most states don't have requirements, and so opticians are just trained on the job. And the reality is that the turnover, and I hear this time and time again from my colleagues, is that, you know, people don't stay very long. And I think it was Steve Jobs or somebody like that who was asked, well, what if we spend all this money training this person and they leave? And his response
Mhm.
was, well, what would be worse is if we don't spend all this money and they stay. And it just kind of got me thinking,
Amen.
man, you know, the number one thing that we should be focusing on is developing people for more than just the sales that it brings in, but for fulfilling them. So I was a little bit of a rant, but you can probably speak to
No, I
that even
love
better than I do because you started this for a reason, right? Is training people.
it.
So what is the
Yes.
cost of an untrained person?
Yeah. Well, the answer I would give in my most quippy way would be, what is it costing you to not have your people trained, right?
Mhm.
Kind of back to what
Yeah.
you were saying, like what is it costing you to not have your person be the most well-refined expert on pre-testing, or be the most well-refined expert on being able to greet your patient and have that experience, or be the most well-refined expert in out in the optical as an optician. And the reality is so much of our industry is so very dynamic. And you hit the nail on the head when you talk about, if you're selling jeans, there's only so many jeans. And then every, season or so, you get a new style and a new thread count and a new, like, that's it, you know. But with the optometric field and every position in our optical offices, the reality is the dynamics are so great, right? They're so vast. And the way that training happens is we are taught by our predecessors, right? And we're just kind of building on what we were taught. And it ultimately becomes a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And not that we all use copy machines anymore, but we know what happens with a copy of a copy. You get this depleted version of meh. And I realized this came to a real, I
You're
guess,
so
fruition
old
for me.
to use that analogy. That's such a good analogy that some people have no idea about because they've never done that. But we were raised in that era where you have a copy. You're much younger than me, but copy of a copy, it just makes it
Yeah,
dulled out, it's
yeah.
smeared, it may be double.
Mhm.
Exactly. That's
Yeah,
such a good
yeah,
analogy.
in college
Sorry.
when you would go to a professor's class and you're like, "What is this? What is this?" And, the original copy was 30 years old. Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
Um, so the reality is, though, is that, being that copy of a copy, right? Having the training of our predecessors is great because we work in a trade, right? Where it's beneficial to be taught by our predecessors. But the reality is that even the most renowned and well-rounded and teachable person who's coming in learning from that predecessor, they're not going to be able to take everything, first off. And secondly, our offices are too darn busy to be able to, even if we could train everything, to be able to actually get it all done. And
Yeah.
this came to a real like ultimately to ultimate fruition for me when I realized we created the first course we created is called the Spexy 101 course. And the idea is it gives optical foundational knowledge to anyone working in the optical field. And I recommend that it go for doctors. There are some offices that are buying it for their doctors, but also mainly opticians and the supporting staff. Now, when I had numerous, once we launched this course, I had numerous tenured opticians that would be emailing me and going, Kayla, I have been doing this for 18 years and I had no idea that this is why we did what we did. I had no idea that this is why, because we're taught by our predecessor. And just having a simple foundation to be able to give your team the training that they need is super powerful. Now, on top of
Yeah.
that, we were talking about, if I have them for a year, if I have them for, a certain amount of time, and even if it's limited, do I want to spend this time, investing in them? We also created about a little over a year ago what we call the leadership course. And in
Hmm.
this series, there are multiple episodes that teach optometric leadership how to optimize their team so that they're not just, I was hired at the front desk and I'm going to be in this spot doing this one thing for X amount of time. It allows you to create a opportunity for growth in the office, and not just in that position, but also in different positions in the office. And it allows for you to keep those good people in the office. Let's be honest, there are some people that once that 2 years, go away, see ya. Darn it, you're gone. That's bummer. Okay, see you. But there are some good people that were like, dang it, I thought we were doing good, you know. And so to be able to have the framework for leadership to set forth expectations has been super, super powerful amongst our Spexy practices in retaining good people and setting goals. I hate the idea of giving raises based on time served, like it's a prison.
Yeah.
Mm-mm, mm-mm, I don't like
Time served.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, me
So
too.
just because it's been a year, it needs to be based on performance. But so many offices, I asked the doctor, okay, the owner doctor who I had a meeting with right before we created the leadership course, I was like, okay, so you want it based on performance. What performance goals have you given them? Well, we're always trying to do better on increasing our AR and increasing our capture rate. That's not within their wheelhouse. You need to give
Right.
them something specific to be able to grow themselves within your practice. And what does
Mhm.
that look like? And that's what we lay out in the leadership course. And it's been foundationally beneficial
Mm.
for so many practices.
Yeah. So it doesn't really matter the specialty we're looking at. It really brings this value. How can people um learn more about Spexy and learn more about you and what you have to offer? I looked it up and I mean I thought it was going to be way more expensive, but tell me a little bit
It's
about
not.
how it.
It's not. It's
Yeah.
amazingly affordable. We call ourselves crazy affordable. Spexy, you can look up Spexy if you just Google it, which is pretty cool. We have a very unique name, SPEXY, Spexy. And if our website, our direct website is bespexy.com, BESPEXY.com. And if you go on there, what's beautiful is that we hate how many in our industry, many corporations in our industry, swindle optometry practices. They put you in
Yeah.
contracts and they make you sign all these things. We never, ever, and will never have contracts at Spexy. The idea is that you stay with us as long as you love us. It is a membership. Right now, our Spexy Plus is $42 a month. Our Spexy Plus Premium, which has all of the learning plus what we call frame turn, which is a very powerful tool to optimize your frame board inventory. It's really, really great. That one's $97 a month. You get discounts when you purchase annual supplies or annual, I guess,
Subscriptions.
memberships.
Yeah.
Yeah, annual supplies. Can you tell I just did a contact lens training yesterday? um,
Yeah.
so that being said, it's something at Spexy that we like to say you can stay as long as you love us. And it's like we're dating. If you need to break up with us for a little while and come back, you certainly can. But we're gonna warn you that once you once you're in with us, we're gonna help you. We're gonna make you fall in love with us, kind of thing.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for sharing some great insights. These are always things that, we get away from because we get into the technical stuff, and optometrists are very much like that. Opticians can be very much like that, some of them.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate your perspective and for sharing this with me. This is good stuff. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super grateful, and thank you for everybody who's listening. I
Yeah.
appreciate being brought on amazing podcasts like this. So thank you very much.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us for this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will look forward to seeing you on another episode. Have a good day.